European Union and ASEAN leaders will be gathering in Brussels tomorrow for a first-of-its-kind summit to mark 45 years of relations. And talks will focus on trade, research, security and sustainable development. But the commemorative summit is also likely to be coloured by geopolitical divisions. Rosie Burchard outlines what the EU hopes to accomplish at this unprecedented gathering.
This was one of the first ever Europe-ASEAN meetings, more than 4 decades ago. Back then, both blocs were smaller, and the European Union was just an economic community. Today, a tapestry of wishes for the next chapter of EU-ASEAN ties hangs in this Brussels museum. Looking ahead, Dr. Wenyan Hu thinks more business with ASEAN could be a boon for Europe.
After the lessons learned from the COVID pandemic, from Russia's invasion in Ukraine, diversification, having resilient supply chains on top of EU's trade agenda. So ASEAN will play a very important role in that.
The EU and ASEAN are each other's third largest trading partners after China and the US, recording more than $300 billion worth of trade in goods and services between them in 2021. The EU was the second largest provider of foreign direct investment in ASEAN in 2021, and ASEAN investment in Europe has been on the rise, growing to around $140 billion by 2019. But so far, the EU only has free trade agreements with 2 ASEAN members, Singapore and Vietnam. Brussels is trying to broaden its list of partners, but future deals could be complicated by new EU legislation to restrict imports of goods linked to deforestation or forced labour.
Yes, there's a need to stop deforestation globally, but on the other hand we have to accept that also those countries have their interest. Those countries have populations who want to have welfare and growth, and therefore I wish that the European side does not stand holding up the finger and explaining what you have to do, but that we really create a dialogue.
At the summit, both sides are expected to commit to fighting climate change, and Brussels will point to its global gateway strategy, a $300 billion pot of infrastructure investment funds to spur on connectivity projects in developing economies. It's widely viewed as a bid to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative, with Europe seeking to be seen as the partner of choice. That's just one sign of the geopolitics at play as EU and ASEAN leaders gather.
This is the room where leaders will meet. This joint summit may be a first, but EU politicians have been in this building over and over again this year for crisis talks as one issue dominates their agenda: Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Busy day today.
Brussels would like all ASEAN members to get on board with fierce condemnation of Moscow, but that could be a politically delicate task.
The best way to approach differences on Russia is to talk and to deal in facts and international law. If we allow a powerful country like Russia, who are a military superpower, to invade their neighbours, to try to change international borders by military force, well then that has a consequence, because it creates a precedent for other parts of the world as well. I think the EU will make a very strong case, and there are many countries across ASEAN that understand that only too well.
Despite differences and divergences, this is a relationship that's endured. Now it's time for the 2 blocs to set the tone for the decades to come. Rosie Burchard, CNA, Brussels.